Well, thank you everybody for coming. I'm Adrià Torralba. I'm from WOC, and this is I'm going to present today a joint work with Cristina Pérez Solà. She's from UAP. And well, this will be a talk about my last article, which is titled A Taxonomy of Security Analysis of Blockchain's Layer 2 Scalability Solutions and Future Directions. Okay, this is already submitted and is in the, it's currently on the reviewing process. This work is also partially funded by two European Union projects, in particular Securing and INCIBE. Well, this is the outline for the presentation, and we have 6 points here. First of all, I'm going to talk about why those layer 1 do not scale. Then, if layer 1 do not scale, I'm going to explain how do we scale blockchains actually nowadays. And then I'm going to talk about why do we need this study. And finally, I'm going to present the security assumptions we found for both layer 1s and blockchain layer 1 and scalability solutions, namely, well, known as layer 2s. And finally, we will draw some conclusions. So, well, why does layer 1 not scale? I'm going to start talking about what's known as the blockchain trilemma, okay? And the scope of this study is restricted to only permissionless blockchains. These are blockchains, layer 1s, in which participants can join and leave freely at any given time, at any given point in time. When we are studying these particular types of blockchains, we want 3 desirable properties. In particular, we want to have scalability, security, all of this while maintaining decentralization. Okay? The problem here is that, well, Vitalik and other authors in the community claim that achieving all these 3 properties at the same time is incompatible, leaving us with a trilemma. Trilemma in the sense that having one of the 3 properties trade-offs with at least one of the remaining 2. If we deep dive into this problem, what we find is that most of the problems achieving that come from the fact, well, come from a wider problem, which is how do we achieve consensus in a decentralized network, okay? And let me present a little bit of history of reaching consensus on a decentralized network, okay? This is a topic that has been studied for many years now, and in particular, it started in 1977, where Lamport presented a framework for proving the correctness of a multiprocess program in a decentralized way. In particular, he stated that we need from 2 properties, safety and liveness. And very informally, safety stands for the fact, well, stands that something bad won't happen ever, and liveness stands for the fact that something eventually will happen on a network. Many years later, for instance, on 1985, Fisher, Lynch, and Patterson presented the FLP impossibility, stating that achieving agreement, validation, and termination at the same time is impossible. Some years later, in 1999, Brewer presented the CAP conjecture, in which he stated that having consistency, availability, under partition tolerance is impossible. Okay, this is what's interesting for us, for our study, because later, on 2002, this conjecture became a theorem thanks to a proof from Gilbert and Lynch. And now we have what's known as the CAP theorem. Okay? But what does it have what does it have to do all of this with blockchains? And well, if we take a look at the CAP theorem, it says that under partition tolerance, we have a trade-off between consistency and availability. Okay? Moreover, it might be possible to relate the CAP theorem with the blockchain trilemma. So, with this landscape, scaling layer ones directly, I mean scaling layer ones while maintaining security and decentralization, it's a tough problem and it might be really hard. So, well, if that's the case, then thank you all for your attention. Let's have some beers, because what are we going to do now? Well, this is not the case, because now I'm going to explain how do we scale blockchains if layer ones do not scale right now, at least not as much as we need right now. And let me tell you a story, okay? Because we all know that Bitcoin and Ethereum do not scale, either because they are slow or because they are expensive. In fact, depending on the network traffic, publishing directly on Ethereum is pretty expensive, even for a simple Ether transaction. But this problem has already been solved, because people came up with some ideas, and these ideas are layer 2s, okay? And these are technologies, extensions made on top of layer 1 blockchain systems. These layer 1s come in the form of payment channel networks, rollups, both zero-knowledge rollups and optimistic rollups, or bridges to enable interoperability. And not only that, because people tried and tested these technologies, and they work pretty well. So people started to invest money on them and lock funds on payment channel networks, on bridges, and also on rollups. So, well, so far, so good, right? So everybody's happy, so let's celebrate, right? Well, not quite, because now I'm going to explain why do we need this study, because if layer 1s do not scale, but we have layer 2s that already scale, why do we need this study? And the reason is right here. I know that the font is very small here and you cannot read anything, but for those who don't know, these are the top 115 most lucrative hacks over any L2 ever. This data is from rec.news, okay? And I know that you cannot see that, but the top 3 ones leaked more than $500 million. But the security issue do not end here, because this ranking is not very useful. But if I show this, these are the hacks that happened on 2023, the blue ones. And on top of that, the purple ones are the hacks that happened on 2022. And look at that, we already have hacks that high on the ranking that happened on 2024. So from the 115 most lucrative hacks, more than half of them happened from 2022 until now. For me, at least, this is a very concerning issue, so we decided to perform a study about which are the security assumptions that layer 1 and layer 2 need to assume or to ensure in order to have a reliable scaling system. So let's go explaining the security assumptions for layer 1. And we found 3 main sources of security assumptions. The first one comes from cryptographic primitives, okay? And in particular, we need secure cryptographic primitives. The first security assumption that we can obtain from this is a hash function. Okay, hash function is one of the most used, if not the most used, cryptographic primitive used in any blockchain right now. In particular, so we need for them to be secure, to be secure and reliable. In particular, the properties that we need from a secure hash function is we need to assume, or we need to ensure that we have unfeasibility on collisions, and we have also second pre-match resistance. On the other hand, from secure cryptographic primitives, we can, we need to assume that we have a digital signature scheme that is secure. Why is that? Well, a digital signature, at the end of the day, ensures that the funds that you claim you have, or the rights to act over some assets on a blockchain that you claim you have, ensures that nobody can go and take them for you. So we need a secure digital signature that provides with authentication, non-repudiation, and immutability. This is only for a secure cryptographic primitive. The other two sources of cryptographic security assumptions are reliable consensus and decentralization. Okay, and first of all, we are going to zoom here and take a look at which are the security assumptions that we can withdraw from a reliable consensus. From a reliable consensus, disclaimer here, in the article, we assume that, we state that having a reliable consensus is totally equivalent to assuming that the consensus is safe and the consensus is live. And from the safety of the consensus, we can withdraw a security assumption, in particular a technical security assumption, which is that we need to have a trusted genesis block, which ensures us that we have a secure bootstrapping. From both the safety and liveness of the consensus, we also need to assume that the actors are rational and that there are incentives to follow the consensus. In particular, the incentives to follow the consensus might handle the token creation, the maximum supply, if any, and also if there is some mechanism to remove tokens from in circulation. And finally here, from the liveness of the consensus, we withdraw that we have eventual consensus. This states that we avoid the problems we have when we have weak synchrony. This means that the messages, this is the case where the messages are delayed for an arbitrary amount of time, and this carries out some consequences. So we assume also that we have eventual consensus. So full picture again, we have discussed that, and now we are going to discuss the rest of them. From decentralization and also from reliable consensus, in particular the liveness, we can withdraw two other security assumptions. In particular, from liveness and decentralization, we assume that we have on-chain data availability. This means that any party on the network should have access to any kind of data, any data stored on the blockchain at any given point in time. And also, we need to assume that we have eventual censorship resistance. This guarantees us finality of transactions. And now we are going to explain, once we have seen the security assumptions that we need to rely on layer 1s, let's going to see which are the additional security assumptions we need for layer 2s. Okay? And this table summarizes the security assumptions we need to have layer 2s running in a secure and reliable way. And well, I know that there is a lot going on the screen, but let me explain that little by little. First of all, each column corresponds to a security assumption, to a scalability solution considered here. In particular, we have considered payment channel networks, optimistic rollups, and zero-knowledge rollups. And each row is a security assumption studied in this article. And the circles, regarding the circles, white circle means that this particular security assumption is inherited from layer 1 directly without modifying that. Half black, half white circle stands for the fact that this security assumption is inherited from layer 1 but maybe modified somehow to make it work on layer 2. And black circle means directly that we have a brand new security assumption on top of layer 1 security assumption. Okay? So, the first security assumption we need to consider is cryptographically secure hash functions, both on L1 and L2 as well. Okay? And for payment channel networks, they need to assume that the underlying underlying layer 1 have a secure hash function, and additionally that the hash function used on this particular scalability solution needs to assume that their hash function is also secure. And in this case, payment channel networks do implement a hash function, but it is the case that the hash function that they are using, that this is using, is exactly the same as the L1 security assumption. So this is why we place a white circle here, because payment channel networks directly inherit the hash function from L1. This is the same case for optimistic rollups, and for zero-knowledge rollups, while they need to assume that the underlying hash function on L1 is secure, they do use a hash function, and they may be using other types of more zero-knowledge friendly hash functions in order to make this system work. Regarding secure digital signatures, for payment channel networks, they inherit that from layer 1 directly, and for both types of rollups, to the best of our knowledge, they are currently using the same implementation as layer 1, but there are right now efforts to implement some kind of aggregated digital signature in which you can put together a lot of signatures into one single signature, for instance, BLS signatures. From liveness and safety of consensus, all the solutions considered here need to assume that across the board, and we have the same case for eventual censorship resistance. We need to assume these two security assumptions across the board for every technology considered here. Regarding data availability, payment channel networks do not need to provide with on-chain data availability, whereas both type of rollups, they need to provide with data availability on-chain on L1. And this in particular means that they need to assume that L1 is always available to post the plain transaction, so any other party in the system can rebuild the tree and check and verify the correctness of L2. Finally, on this first part, we have that the actors act rationally, both on L1 and L2 as well. For payment channel networks, they need to assume always that the L1 actors act rationally and that there are incentives to follow the protocol. But on top of that, they need to assume that for the L2 actors, the payment channel network actors, they need to act rationally, in particular in two cases. In the case of when routing a multi-hop payment on the payment channel network, and when handling the closing transaction of when closing a channel. For both type of rollups, they need to assume that the actors on L2 act rationally and that there are incentives to follow the L2 protocol. Well, to follow the L2 rules and that the L2 system is safe and sound. This ends the security assumptions for L1, and well, the security assumptions that could be inherited from L1. And from now, we are going to talk about which are the security assumptions that we need. Well, additional security assumptions that these technologies need to assume on top of the L1 security assumptions. Okay, the first one is that the bridge smart contract is secure, and they need to assume that as a brand new security assumption across the board. In fact, this is a crucial and really important security assumption, additional security assumption, because if you remember from before the leaderboard, the ranking, many of those hacks happened on the bridge smart contract. The bridge smart contract is the point where the layer 1 and layer 2 are communicating, and usually the user needs to log funds there in order to interact then later on L2. So they need to assume that this smart contract, this bridging smart contract, is secure. Finally, here for payment channel networks, we need to assume that the node is always online, that the parties conforming the channel are always online and responsive. And for optimistic rollups, the last additional security assumption they need is to assume that the fraud proofs have a wide enough time window to invalidate the state transition in case of need. Right now, this time window is around 7 to 10 days. And finally, for this slide, the three remaining security assumptions we have are related to zero knowledge. So these are the additional security assumptions that zero knowledge rollups need. In particular, zero knowledge rollups need to assume that the conversion from the ZK EVM to EVM is correctly done, that the zero knowledge framework used is secure and sound, and the trusted setup is, well, in cases on, well, in the zero knowledge frameworks that usually are snark based, which rely on a trusted setup, they need to assume that this trusted setup is correctly generated. In particular, that the toxic waste is safely disposed, or at least generated using multi-party computation. So let's present some conclusions. First of all, security on layer 2s is a concerning issue. We have seen that every layer 2 has additional security assumptions on top of layer 1s. We also have seen that layer 2s are in constant evolution, and in some cases they are not tested thoroughly, not tested enough. And we have also found compromises between usability or convenience and additional security assumptions. So, well, this is a paper already submitted to journal, and well, that's all from my side. Thank you for your attention. Happy to take questions. Thank you.